Welcome to this week's episode of Make It So, the Real Super Geeks Star Trek Picard after show. We've got a lot to talk about this week as we review episode 7 of Picard Nepenthe. And let's start with Mickey Mouse Club roll call. We'll start with our special guest this week, Kate Stark, who is rejoining us after a spell. How are you doing, Kate?
I am alive and happy to be so.
And we're glad too. And when I said a spell, I actually was using that literally, since you had a spell of something, right? Flu, cold?
Fingers crossed it was just a cold.
Okay, great. Also joining us this week, our sort of mascot Index, played by Sun Seal. How are you, Sun?
Hello, everyone. I'm doing all right.
I love the way your eyes flash. And another special guest.
Are you saying
no, you are. You're actually.
Are you saying you like it when my eyes sparkle, Carlos?
Yes, I am. I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for sparkling blue eyes. And joining us officially as a regular co-host, Travis Litton from the great state of Colorado. I say that because I grew up there. How are you doing, Travis?
I'm in the same boat as Kate. Hoping that whatever happened earlier today is just a fluke. I've got tea and I've got coffee beside me, so
I think I look at many of my days in exactly that same way. Now, also joining us, the eyebrows of doom, Ross Bullock. How are you, Ross?
Doing good. The efforts of Great Father Nurgle continue to be held at bay by my faith of the Emperor.
I have no idea what he just said, but I believe it's true.
It's a Warhammer 40K reference.
Oh, okay. That's why I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's why it went right over me.
And last but not least, our stalwart producer, Justin Burton. How are you doing, Justin?
Doing well.
Great. Your microphone looks great today. You've got, we're hearing you very clearly, so yay for that.
Yay.
All right, let's jump in to this 7th episode of what we know is a 10-episode first season of Star Trek Picard, which means that we are well on our way on the home stretch of this first season.
I don't want it to end.
I can understand that. So let's do just a quick roundtable. I'm just curious, are you guys satisfied so far with the direction this series is moving now that we're into episode 7? What do you think, Kate?
I am loving this series. I mean, it's ripped my heart out several times and left me in a puddle of tears, but it is just brilliant storytelling and what I've been waiting for from Star Trek for a long time.
Get them off the screen.
Say again, Travis?
Oh, I was talking to Justin. He flashed a thing.
Flashed a thing. Russ, how do the eyebrows of doom weigh in on the series so far?
As a child of Next Generation, the nostalgia train was full speed ahead for this entire episode. Just seeing the Riker family like that just gave me a big warm fuzzy the whole time. Of course, offset by the terrible loss towards the end of the episode.
Indeed. Folks at home, this is a spoiler review, so
be
warned.
Spoilers!
Sun/Index, how do you weigh in on the series so far?
The series as a whole, I'm definitely enjoying.
How about this one episode?
This episode was filled with a whole bunch of different Easter eggs that I was able to pick up on that I don't think others did.
Well, that's what makes it more enjoyable for you, right? Travis, how do you weigh in on Picard season 1 so far?
I'm liking it a lot. I'm very satisfied. I really, really, really want to binge it with my father and his friend because I know his friend is a big TNG nut. I'm the exact opposite of Ross. I did not grow up with the Next Generation. I didn't see a single Next Generation episode until about 2015 or 16.
Okay, you are freaking me out. How is that even possible?
Well,
It's
I
a
know
fresh
exactly how it's possible. I can tell you exactly how it's possible. Growing up, I did not have cable, and it just didn't broadcast on broadcast TV. I was DS9 was my father's Star Trek before he started bringing in DVDs of the original series. So,
All right. So definitely a gap in your childhood education, but I'm glad you've remedied it since.
Theoretically, it is possible.
But yeah, aside from the fandom wearing me down as far as the like negativity, I'm enjoying myself.
Well, good to hear. I was expecting you to say needs more Elnor.
Yeah.
I mean that it could always use more Elnor, but I mean DS9 could use Elnor.
We all could use more Elnor. Justin, how are you weighing in?
Actually, it's quite enjoyable. It's, took a predictable turn this last episode.
Predictable? Which part was predictable?
Hugh's death was predictable.
No, you predicted it. That doesn't mean it was predictable. Two different things. But we will dive into that.
The fact that he did predict it didn't make it technically predictable.
Well, only for him. Only for him. I don't think most people.
I did it. When they see nobody else was expecting it. See, they've been liking to throw curveballs at us with this.
Indeed,
show.
and they sure did this episode.
We'll
get into it. We'll get into it. We will get
nothing.
into it, folks.
Oh yeah.
Let's dive in. We've got plenty of time to talk about that when we get to it. Okay, let's start with actually something that that you alluded to, Travis, and that's or no, I guess it was Ross. That the series so far has had a lot of Easter eggs, references, callbacks to the Next Generation without necessarily making those things, the knowledge of those things vital to appreciate these episodes. But this episode, more than most, really leaned into the Next Generation roots of this show by reintroducing us to two of Picard's oldest friends, Will Riker and Deanna Troi. And it's interesting to me, and because you all know, if you've been listening to this podcast and the Super Geeks podcast, that I have never been a fan of fan service in these shows. And I would say this was not fan service. This was terribly important to the arc of the show, and particularly Picard's personal arc in the show. And I felt like it was just the right amount of callbacks to not the original series, to Next Generation, and it lent it, as Sean said in his post on the Facebook group, to many feels. So do you think that Picard has balanced its callbacks to Next Generation and other Star Trek lore very well? And how did you feel about the Will and Deanna deep dive in Nepenthe? Ross, why don't you start us off?
I think if this was going to be kind of a fan servicey encounter, it would have been on a starship. It would have been on the Titan. Would have seen the Titan on screen. Riker would have come in to swoop by and save the day. That's not what happened here at all. We got to see, as the ongoing theme of this show, we're seeing these characters outside of Starfleet. This is Riker and Troi retired, outside of Starfleet, raising a family, living a relatively normal life. And
technically just active or reserve active duty or something.
Active reserve, yes. Yeah. But like he said, it would have to take something extraordinary to get him back in. If
that wasn't a big hint, I don't know what was.
Death flags. Anyway, it was really cool to see them living this kind of pastoral life out in at least a rural environment, removed from any large portions of civilization. It was almost rustic, if not for the computer interfaces, the shield arrays, and the anti-cloaking scans. But
indeed, which were very cool to learn about.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the anti-cloaking scan is a hint that we shouldn't expect cloaks to be as an important part of Romulan's defenses as it has been in the past.
Maybe.
Just my theory.
But as things advance, so do the things that defend and subvert them.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about what we learn about the Riker's Troys that that occurred since we've last seen them, and the importance that history brought to this episode. Kate, you want to talk about that a bit?
I thought it was really interesting because of how subtly it was done. It was something that if you did not know Riker and Troy's history from TNG, it didn't feel like it was critical to know it. You could just come right in and be fine. But what I really liked was how they deepened the relationship between the two by giving them a child who they lost, and how that affected the entire family. You could see that they were still working through that sense of loss every day in their little interactions. And I also loved how that then tied back into the overall theme of family and loss and change.
Nepenthe, by the way, is a reference to from the Odyssey. It was a drug that was used to forget your sorrows, and that certainly seemed to be part of what they were trying to do there in the wake of the death of their son Thad, who died, as it turns out, specifically because the treatment was now illegal because of the banning of synthetics.
It quiets painful memories, and I've also heard it described as the anti-sorrow.
Anti-sorrow. So, yeah. So, I mean, the kind of the pastoral setting that you were talking about definitely was sort of meant to soothe their grief. And the planet literally had the regenerative properties, which is why I think they moved there while Thad was still alive. So, and then of course there was the whole undercurrent about homeworlds, which we'll go into a little bit. But Son, how do you feel about how the Will and Deanna pieces of this episode fit?
I think the big kicker in all of this is that you, like Ross said, you're seeing Riker and Deanna outside of the Federation, and a lot of that is because they too have become broken. In much the same way that Lwaxana was broken with the death of her own daughter, Kestro. And to have them trying to go to a planet that's weirdly like the Briar Patch planet. Oh my God.
That's true.
To try and save their son. Yeah, it's just kind of this, we're retiring from the Federation to see if we can help our son, because Lord knows this is now a banned thing. Because if you listen to what Deanna says, she says the treatment was theoretically possible. Mm-hmm. So he was diagnosed after the ban.
Right.
Which means the treatment was also created after the ban.
I think the
no, we don't know that necessarily. We don't know
the treatment was there before.
The treatment was there before. They just couldn't use it anymore because
they couldn't create any more positronic matrices in order to synthesize the treatment for the disease.
Right, but she calls it a theoretical treatment. If it was a treatment that had been in practice before, it wouldn't be theoretical.
I don't remember the theoretical part. So you
did say theoretical, but I think we're just interpreting it different ways.
Yeah. Anyway, but your point is still valid.
Right.
About that.
This is a broken family. I love how the first shot we see of daughter Kestra is this kind of Princess Mononoke figure.
In silhouette.
Yeah. And she's got this whole aesthetic of being this wild child of the forest. And we come to find out this is all a creation of her dead brother, of Thaddeus.
Did you guys get a sense of how long he had been dead for?
I think it was at least 10 years.
Well, then he would have been only 8. Because he was just about to turn 18. He would have turned 18, Deanna said. So,
well, it had to have been after the ban on synthetics.
Yeah, right, that's 14 years. That's 14 years.
She said he was born on starships, presumably the Titan.
Also, I think she said that Kestra missed him, so Kestra would have had to be old enough to really know him.
Yeah, that's why I think it's more recent rather than longer.
Long enough for things to have begun to heal.
I got a brain train.
So I think he's been dead for a few years at this point.
Yeah, although his room's still just as he left it, apparently.
Well,
morning parents do that.
So okay, for those who don't understand or don't know, there are 2 Easter eggs here. Kestra is obviously a reference to Luoxana's dead daughter, Kestra.
Yeah.
Renamed by, and with this name given to Troy's daughter. Thaddeus, or Thad as they've nicknamed him, is a reference to Riker's ancestor from Death Wish.
Yep.
So
yeah, there were definitely lots of callbacks, which gives this episode a real texture that for longtime fans, but takes nothing away from the experience that new fans would have.
I love Picard's line to her: "You'd better aim for my head. My heart is solid deuterium."
Wasn't it like tritanium or durotanium?
Solid duratanium.
Yeah, duratanium. Indeed.
I've got the canon references post up on the.
He lost it in a bar fight.
Yeah, it's true. So let's talk a little bit about Kestra, because she's really quite pivotal in this episode, as we see.
Central. She's central.
Well, yeah, okay.
She steals the show.
Most things that pivot are in the center. And yes, she does steal the show. No doubt about that. So Picard and Soji show up thanks to the magic board teleporter. And within like a minute, thanks to Kestra, Soji experiences yet another trauma as she finds out that she's an android and who her father actually is. So that was kind of that threw her for a bit, but Kestra went on to play a really vital role in this episode. And how would you describe it, and why do you think it worked? If you did think it worked, Travis, what do you think?
Well, I personally really loved the chemistry between Soji and Kestra in this episode. I think just Kestra's, I almost looked at Kestra as a Trekkie on the set of The Next Generation, almost, with all the questions she was asking Soji. Like, do you play the violin? Do you like Sherlock Holmes? Do you
Ballroom dancing?
What's that?
Ballroom dancing.
All references to Data.
Yep.
She was one of the most heartwarming elements of the show for me. I loved Jonathan Frakes and his interactions with her, and how he would just always call out like "wild girl in the woods," that kind of thing. You could tell that he was just a loving father, and I'm going to have to come back to this point eventually eventually. Like, I want to talk about the family. Like, I need to say something.
Well,
But,
jump in
like,
now. Go ahead and do it now.
it is so goddamn refreshing to finally see a Star Trek family last. There are way too many Star Trek couples in this franchise that just don't last. Jadzia, Dax, and Worf don't last.
Lwaxana and anybody.
The jury's out on Ezri, Dax, and Bashir. You know, Kirk never lasts with anybody. Frickin' Worf and Troy don't last. Michael Burnham and Nash Tyler, they might not last.
O'Brien and Keiko lasted.
Well, yeah,
barely.
Yeah, but every other week was a Fuck with O'Brien episode on Deep Space Nine.
It's because Cole Meany is such a great actor.
Them and Tom Paris and B'Elanna Torres are the closest we have, and we still don't know exactly if things worked out. It's so
We
nice
have an
to
idea
see that Riker and Troy have lasted all this time and have, you know, put together a very loving family and have a very loving relationship.
You definitely get a sense and weight of history that they've experienced in the intervening decades. And boy, you can like almost literally feel it in the way that that they all talk to Picard and talk to one another and talk to Kestra. And it created such a sense of, yes, warmth and family, but also like ghostly tension, you know, haunting them all the time.
There's a quote from Riker in this episode, and it's right when Picard is standing next to him and he's putting in a pizza, and Riker is telling him, like, are you going to tell me about what's going on? And Picard's like, no, I don't want you to get involved. I regret coming here already. And Riker says something along the lines of, oh, if only danger, like the ignorance of danger was enough to actually prevent the ones you love from being a part of it. And you can actually hear just a brief touch of emotion in him. Like, I almost thought Riker was about to cry.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, afterwards, like, Riker just kind of brushes it off and he's laughing again. But I was like, oh my God, like, Riker just got like a little, like, he gave Picard a bit of a
Riker
jab there.
Picarded
like,
Picard.
Yes.
Yeah, the sense of affection between the two of them, something we only saw little glances of in the throughout the series and a little bit more in the movies. We saw this very deep well of affection between the two of them that it was just heartwarming, and it gave the story an intensity. You know, the idea that, you know, Picard is literally on the run, everything's falling apart around him, he has no plan, no ship, no crew, and so he seeks out essentially his best friends whom he didn't want to involve. We know from, I think, episode 2 when his Romulan friends asked about them, and you know, and even that now that he's there, he doesn't want to pull them in any further by telling them what's going on. And yet, of course, Will Riker is Will Riker. He figures it all out, like, within 5 minutes.
Yes.
And at some point, Picard sort of gives in when they have dinner, and he says, or was it Deanna who said, it was Deanna who said, imagine it's the ready room on the Enterprise. And it was like, it was like one of the, you know, their famous conference room scenes where he asks people for advice, they give him advice, and they, you know, figure stuff out and everything. And except, you know, Kestra was there too. And I think it was part of the dynamic that ultimately, I think, made Soji, you know, turned her around in terms of trusting Picard.
Side note.
Yeah.
I've seen a few people ask whether Soji had done that Data head twitch before. She did it in Maps and Legends. So
you know, I wondered that too.
When Narek was leading her to the Borg ritual.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. You know, and I'm surprised I didn't notice it then, because I totally noticed it before Riker, you know, referenced it in
it wasn't
this episode.
as central in that scene.
Yeah,
They were moving so quickly. The scene was moving so quickly. It was hard to miss. Going back, you can see it.
Okay, tell me again where it was in that episode. Maps and Legends?
Narek was leading her to that empty corridor for the Borg ritual.
Oh, right, where they slid down the yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I will definitely take another look at that. And thanks for looking that up, because I really did wonder if they just threw that in or if it was something they'd actually done earlier. So yeah, thank you, Twitter.
Yeah, they've been really good about trying to keep everything lined up with this one. So that they haven't so far just kind of thrown anything in there just for
the attention to detail has been really good.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm really surprised.
I burned Mecha Random.
Did you?
Everybody burned
the Twitter thread. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Send me a screenshot.
Oh, do tell.
It was tasteful. All I said, she was going on about how they just threw it in for blah blah blah. Dislike. Look again. It's there.
Honestly.
Stupid.
I was reading
random like Riker burn those.
Oh, by the way. Those of you who have been dealing with STD sucks on Twitter, he has had his account suspended, so they no longer have to deal with that one. One
Really
less troll.
naming there, really.
Yeah.
I read a tweet today from our favorite member of the Dark Circle, Doomcock, who went on about how painful it was for him to keep watching this show.
Do it in his voice.
And what's that?
Do it in his voice.
Oh, I can't do his voice. I can't do his voice.
Just pitch your voice down. Be comical about it. Have fun with it.
It makes me so sick.
There you go.
There you go.
And all I could think of was, dude, why watch it? Why watch it? If it's literally physically painful for you, why watch it? Oh, that's right. You have to be a martyr.
Because it brings in the bucks. I need to
pay
more.
Martyr complex. Pay your daddy's rent. Because basements aren't free.
Give me your money. Support my Patreon.
See, this
I need money now.
Okay, go ahead, son.
Maybe I'm just weird or strange or something, but I apply the same logic to those people.
Which people?
Like the Dark Circle's rantings make me sick. That's why I don't participate in any of that crap.
Yeah.
It's hard to not come across it though. I don't go looking for it.
well, let's be honest. I don't engage in it and have never engaged in it, so it's not fed to me constantly.
Well, I feel I need to be informed.
In the big Star Trek group, every now and then, unfortunately, we do get the pending posts from Midnight's Edge or Doomcock. Like the latest Doomcock video that was posted for our approval. The thumbnail was just like, good God, is this guy even trying? Just like, Star Trek sucks hard, and just like there's, oh no, salt vampire, are you going to suck me? No, there's too much sucking going on around here. It sucks. It's like, good God.
Yeah,
dude,
it's just ridiculous.
I think that's enough time for them.
Yeah, I think for sure. Okay, so let's get back to the subject of Soji, because obviously she's in many ways she's the point of view character in this episode, which is I think one of the reasons why all the sort of nostalgic part works, because it's working to sort of convince her that she can trust Picard, that she can trust, even though she explicitly says at one point, to Deanna, she says, you're being all nice and warm and friendly and offering me food makes me trust you less.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate Deanna actually having a proper counseling session?
Yes! Oh my God! If Sean was here, he would put pants on just to celebrate her actually doing a great counseling session, because that was an awesome one. Agreed.
Real counseling. Oh my God, they actually wrote it correctly for a change. I mean, my God, how nice.
And did you notice, by the way, that even though she and Riker still obviously regard Picard with respect and honor and affection,
she gives no shits about calling out Picard.
Exactly, and neither did Will. When he says, he chastises him several times through the episode, including the one where he says, she's basically a teenager and you're not ready to handle a teenager.
I love
And then
that.
she shoves him aside.
He calls him out. The usual Picard arrogance.
Yes.
Another
You get to
great
decide
quote.
who lives, who dies, who's in the loop, who's not.
not.
Yeah, I thought that was a really well, although to be fair, I mean, in most of that time, he's a captain. That's what captains are supposed to do. But
Well, I mean,
his
says that
point
it's
is
okay to
still a
do
good
that.
point.
He's on the bridge of a starship.
Right. Which of course he isn't anymore.
He is not.
Call back to the Starfleet admiral. The goddamn fucking hubris.
Yeah.
That's not the what
I
she
think you
said.
could call this.
Sheer fucking
I just
hubris.
lost it.
Sheer fucking hubris. Indeed.
The Star Trek Picard, aka ego check.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Son, you were the one who pointed this out last week, and you referenced it earlier as well. All of these characters are really broken in some very profound ways. I mean,
One of whom it's happening in real time.
yeah, exactly.
Well, two it's happening in real time.
And that theme for this show, they carry it through from episode to episode. It's one of the strongest through lines in the whole series so far, I think.
They should call it what they named the next episode. They should call it Star Trek Broken Pieces, not Star Trek Picard, because almost everything is broken in this series.
Ooh, emotional trauma.
Broken Pieces is the title of the next episode. So shit's going down apparently.
Oh yes.
Big group again.
So one of the things that Picard in some ways feels more broken in this episode than he did even at the beginning. I think as he's really sort of flailing around trying to find some ground that he can stand steady on after everything that's happened so far. Do you feel like he was successful in that? Son, what do you think?
This episode in particular feels less like an episode about Picard, more than it is a episode of getting to know Soji without the Romulan influence, without the Borg cube and all of that work and all of this stuff. This is us getting to know Soji outside of just having her world shattered.
And her mucus.
That
That was a big deal. Yeah. So, I wonder, we get some hints that we may see them again. Do you expect it? Who expects it and who doesn't? You expect
I'm
it,
open
Justin?
to it.
I
You're open to it?
Absolutely.
for it, but I don't know. They kind of felt like a final moment for the family in this episode. When Picard beams away, Riker and Deanna are holding each other, and Kester runs back inside to do what she does. I feel like it's that they've served their purpose. Their book ended, and that's that. It felt different than when 7 and 9 was viciously shooting her way out of that
Well,
bar.
and she'd left the the little call me if you need me thing, which of course we saw Eleanor use. That
wasn't
part bothered me,
Picard's.
by the way.
Yeah,
that
bothered
wasn't
me too.
Picard's.
It wasn't?
No. He was nowhere near that console, and he didn't have any time to, clip it to
So
something.
where
underneath.
would it? Okay, that makes it even more
We'll get
weird.
there.
Did you watch?
We'll get there.
Did you watch the Ready Room?
Oh no, I didn't. No, I didn't.
In the
I didn't.
clip, when 7 shows up, she asks, "Where's Hugh?" So she knows he's there. I think it was his.
But that still makes but that scene is still so weird though. Like,
say more about that, son.
Is that Hugh's console? It can't be, because Hugh had his own fucking office. That was like a console overlooking like
Right, but it was a console
All of
where
it.
Hugh was, so
I mean, do we know
Right.
that? I mean, it was just.
yeah, because it
was
was right
literally-
after Hugh ostensibly died, which we need to talk about soon too.
I mean, because at this point, it was literally just a key dangling from a console. That's all it was at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah,
In the middle of the gray zone where the Romulans typically don't wander around.
right. So good point. I assumed it was Picard's. So it sounds like there's another side of the story there. So thanks for pointing that out, Ross. I normally watch the Ready Room like right after, but I watched this so late at night and I just conked out during the right after the preview for next week. What's that, Travis?
Oh, I just said Z Z Z Z Z Z Z Z.
Exactly. So.
Can we talk about the beginning of this episode?
Yes,
Let's talk Girardi.
Yeah, let's go. I mean, I was coming around to that, but
It was the very beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
yes, and it kind of made sense coming right after the previously on Star Trek Picard that we go back to something that happened, and this is a thing that's causing a lot of controversy. More than I would have expected, but yeah. So we find out more about what Commodore O and her schmancy Ray-Bans said and told, and mind melded with Girardi, that made her go on to kind of be the mole inside the Motley Crew. Okay, so what do you think we learned from that, and what are some open questions? Son, you brought it up, so you get to start.
We fought last week about this, did we not?
Yes, we did.
So
I can't remember.
we see a whole bunch of I'm going to call them pre-sundering Vulcans. That's exactly what I'm going to do.
You call them what?
Pre-sundering Vulcans. So when Romulans and Vulcans were together.
Oh, okay.
Because that has got to be how far back this goes. Sure, it's probably a big, huge thing as a part of Romulan culture, but O's like quite clearly a Vulcan.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's definitive now.
So we have this. We have these people who are standing around this thing, and
Are you talking about the preview for next week?
No. This is actually what she shows Girardi.
Okay.
In the mind meld.
Yeah.
Of course, O is one of the figures, and that may or may not be the case specifically for this vision.
By the way, I'd like to quickly interject on the mind meld thing. I told you so. Thank you.
I don't think that was going out on too much of a limb. If she's a Vulcan and she's convincing someone to do something, a mind meld isn't like out of left field.
Well, except the fact that you argued against it time and time again until I brought up the fact
against the mind meld.
Yes, against the mind meld.
He argued against the idea that the mind meld coerced her.
Yeah,
or
I don't think she
suggestion.
was coerced. I still don't think she was coerced, even from what we saw in this episode. I think what she showed her was something that shook her to the core, and when she says, "Tell me what you need me to do," she's sincere in that.
I mean, she kind of puked her lunch right there, so pretty good.
Yeah,
indication.
she seems to puke. This is 2 pukes in one episode. You don't
When you're
coerce someone
dealing
to
with
puke.
severe emotional trauma, which
No,
is
of
exactly
course,
what that
of course.
was.
Yes, no, and it was a kind of a bookend actually. So
Yeah.
so yeah, it makes sense. Right. So, Son, we keep going with what you were saying.
So the first image we see is of O as a hooded figure and what I assume to be pre-sundering Vulcans around this thing. Now, it's interesting to note that when we see this this thing, whatever it is already in its kind of blown out state. In the trailer for next week, we see it blowing out. But in this state that it's in already, all of the pre-sundering Vulcans around it are already kind of lying dead on the ground.
Okay, so we're talking tens of thousands of years ago.
Right.
Possibly.
So I don't know
How
why.
old is O? Then if
It doesn't matter. It's a really long time ago. The point is, what leads you to conclude that they're pre-sundering? I mean,
the just the fact that O is participating in this,
which would argue for it not being pre-sundering. It's clearly she lives in the present. So
it would also explain. It would also explain why Romulans and Vulcans are covertly collaborating on this.
Well, we don't know necessarily that like all of Vulcan is behind this. We just know that O is.
We have O, who is the head of Starfleet security, working with Narissa, who is Tal Shiar, or Zhat Vash.
Yeah, but it's
collaborating.
But she's an individual. You can't assume that like this is a whole Vulcan thing that they're participating in. I mean,
I'm applying Occam's razor here.
No, you're generalizing.
I'm not saying Vulcans as
race,
a whole. I'm saying a cabal of Vulcans operating in secret are working with Romulans who are operating in secret.
We know one Vulcan
for more secret stuff and lots of secrets everywhere.
Yeah, well, definitely, there's lots of secrets. No question there. I think it's a leap. That's
so. What would be the simpler answer then, Carlos?
To which question?
To the fact that O had this prophecy from what we keep hearing is long ago about this event happening in the future, and is then imparting it to Jurati.
Okay, first of all, we don't know exactly what the connection is between what O showed Jurati and the prophecy that we heard Ramda speak in an interview. I mean, clearly they're related in some way, but we don't know enough about either one to start leaping to any conclusions here. Also, what you call prophecy may in fact be something that O has experienced in some way. So it's not like she's just shooting these images, these theoretical images into Jurati's mind. It's based on something real that she's experienced, and I think has to have for it to have that kind of an emotional impact on Jurati, don't you think?
Or it could have been passed down to her in a similar way as a Katra is passed from one Vulcan to another.
I really hope not. Prophecy.
You really hope not?
I really hope not. Like, I am so over the prophecy trope, man. It's what killed heroes for me.
Actually, I totally agree with you. I think prophecy is like this, get out of jail free Deus Ex Machina thing. I prefer to think. I mean, I think you can have the conspiracy part of this work really well without having to lean on some weird prophecy.
At least this prophecy doesn't rhyme.
What
rhymed?
Deep Space Nine.
No, whenever prophecies are usually these epic poems.
Oh, well, yeah. So, often, but
I'm wasted on such.
You're a prophecy. I just hear like, the prophecy says. What prophecy are you talking about? Please just tell me.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, we see a lot of images. Go ahead, son.
At this point, Justin was talking about us doing like a seasonal thing or wrap up or prediction, but at this point, the way it's going, the way this series looks to me, it looks to me like everything that they've done to stop this prophecy is going to wind up making it come true. A self-fulfilling prophecy.
Another trope.
Another trope, and that's why I'm wondering if that's really what we're seeing.
Control.
No, it's not going to be goddamn control. I mean, come on.
I do think Ross made an interesting observation that it could be a memory being passed down.
I think I made that observation.
And
his observation was about it being like a Katra thing, which yes, that's I think that's a more plausible a more plausible explanation, I think,
Yeah,
than
and
anything I've heard so far.
I think if it is a memory, you've got to wonder if there's any kind of loss in translation as it's being passed through different people's perceptions.
Yeah.
And if maybe over time, what was a memory of an actual event carrying all those very strong emotional reactions maybe started to take on the feeling of a myth or a prophecy.
I think that makes a lot of
Oh.
sense. And if you know Michael Chabon's work, literary work, is very much in keeping with things he's done in his novels. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think that's a salient observation.
I really need to read this
actually
guy's
go.
work.
I could actually go with what I was hinting at with the control bit. Hear me out. I know control is not, you don't think it's in Clark, but what if the memories they are seeing are from the future where control actually existed? And
No.
There
This is not,
something.
they are not trying to connect this to Discovery. They don't need to. They have Patrick
except there's
Stewart
an
and
image in
Picard.
the mind meld that's a very reverse image of the
It's
Of
not
a planet blowing up, that is a
Yeah.
trope. That is like,
okay.
Except
There-
that almost the shot for shot is shots from Discovery.
I just linked something in the group chat, in the Zoom chat, side by side images of the Discovery planet exploding from the control memories and the Picard mind meld images.
That's
They are
good.
very similar. However, it could be that they are reusing assets for a similar scene
Mhm.
because there are some differences, but
But
there
they
are
have not
distinct
done that
similarities
yet.
that people are latching onto.
yeah, I think the only one of those that means anything to me that I think holds any water is the middle one.
Yeah.
Is someone sharing that? Can someone share it so the folks at home can see this?
I will put it in the chat
Thanks. I mean, are you sharing it on?
on Twitch chat.
Oh, okay. I'll share it here then. Let's see.
I don't have it downloaded.
No, I
It's in
won't.
the Zoom chat.
It is in the Zoom chat. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see.
Okay. So, I mean, let's look at these two. These three images.
You want me
okay.
to pull up on the? Yeah, I can do that. Hang on. Let me share it.
Okay. I thought you said it was on the Zoom chat. So.
It is.
I can actually share it on the screen if you want me to.
Do
Yeah,
it.
that's what I meant. So yes,
Okay.
do it, please.
Okay,
Make it happen.
I will. I think I remember how. Give me a second. Share and basic, and we are going to share this and share.
Okay, so let's look at these three images. Can you make that bigger, or on my screen it's really small? I'll just make my window bigger. Okay, so so these three side by sides. Okay, the first one is about as generic a planet explosion scene as you can see. If they'd been exactly the same, I'd be like, okay, these are shot at different angles. They're different planets. They're different kinds of explosions. Explosions, nuclear explosions, whatever on planets, all look like this. That does not sway me in any way. The second one, I think, is similar. You can make a case, even though that explosion is different as well. But the little like triangular thing that whoever highlighted this points out, you can see kind of that in both images. But they are still two very different images. And the third one, again, different images. They're showing different kinds of explosions. So I'm not sure you can look at this.
Screen Red had a much better correlation than this with their Easter eggs video.
If you can find it, share it, because I think it'd be worth seeing. I just I'm more persuaded by Ross's idea that they're just reusing assets because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And Star Trek has always done that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, always done it.
Generations Y.
Yeah. So so yeah, I'm not convinced by that, but find me some better ones and I'll certainly reconsider.
It'll happen.
Okay, let me go back to my notes here. All right, so we'll probably go into this more in the prediction Smackdown. So I'm going to move on to another topic about the episode, because I'm sure we're going to revisit theories about what we saw, what Commodore O showed Agnes. So let's talk a little bit about Agnes and what she was kind of at the center of on the La Sirena as there's only 3 people left, her, Rios, and Rafi. And she's obviously feeling guilt about killing Maddox, and about the fact that it's clear that they're on the run from the Romulans, and she is the tracking mechanism by which they keep finding her.
Yeah, she shows that after the mind pill, where she takes the she takes that pill, has to chew it. First chewable we've seen in Star Trek.
Exactly, I thought that too, and I was like, that looks tasty, like
And
space
the
gummy.
impact of it.
Like a little
Wow.
adult vitamin.
Yeah, and the fact that she basically had to take a neurotoxin to eliminate its effectiveness, which
I love the effect that has, because take it, swallow it, it's done, it's painless. She says it must be chewed. So now she has to make a second decision to fully commit to the action, and you just see the pain in her eyes and the trembling of her jaw. Oh my God, she's a wonderful actress.
Yeah, Alison Pill is pretty amazing. And
I do want to point out that it was so weird that this thing looked like a triangle of like computer stuff. Ross said it kind of looked like a gummy, but it was this like triangle thing, and so she has to chew it, and it crunches.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true. Which gummies don't, but yeah, it was interesting. And I think that was just a choice they made because that, they throw in that sound effect and it just makes it feel more real.
I would say that they used it in a way to basically show just how committed Jurati was. If it was just a swallowable, she could probably just hide it in her mouth and, really think do I really want to commit myself to this? When having Starfleet say you got to chew it really hammers home the point, she is committed to doing this, because once she chews it, there's no going back.
Right.
There's no induced vomit or anything like that. It is very much she's in it for the long haul, if that makes any sense.
It couldn't have been more visceral unless she handed her a suppository.
Right. So interestingly, Agnes nearly comes clean with Rios after he, gives her his conspiracy theory that Rafi is the mole, even if unwitting. And then he gets called away, and then she takes that opportunity to poison herself. How are we feeling about Agnes these days, since the murder 2 episodes ago of Bruce Maddox, and we all had our sort of theories and reactions to that and about her? Have your opinions changed? Why don't you start us off, Kate?
I feel for her. I mean, she's doing a great job illustrating that whatever it was showed her that we only saw pieces of, it was enough to absolutely just shatter her. But she's still, I think, a fundamentally good person. She still does, she doesn't want, I think, to really hurt Soji or endanger the rest of the crew.
Right.
I think she cares about him, but whatever this is, it's so big, she's just compelled by it. And so she's just existing in this state of just pure agony.
Yeah, she's definitely being torn. I noticed she had another really, it was just a moment, but I thought it was really telling when Elnor announces that he's going to stay on the cube, and Rios is like, son, you're crazy. And she's the only one who says out loud, and brave.
And brave.
And that was just a really powerful moment for me, not just because it was Eleanor and I love Eleanor, but just because she really, it's the first time you're seeing in this episode that, yeah, she cares about these people in a very deep way. And so it's, it's sort of the beginning of that through line through the episode that ends up with her poisoning herself.
It's also something of a self-deprecation on her part. She's
Right,
calling him
because
brave, but she's accusing herself internally of being a coward.
Indeed. So where do you stand on her today, Ross?
I'm very sympathetic for her. She's being compelled by these images, by a completely destroying her own worldview and self-value. She has dedicated her life to creating synthetic life, and in just a few seconds, she's seen that her dedication could potentially lead to galaxy-devastating consequences. And on top of that, she's gone full Raskolnikov. For any of you who've read Crime and Punishment, thank you, yeah. AP Lit, high school. But one of the few books I actually read in its entirety because it was compelling. From school, I mean. Just how she's torturing herself over her own guilt. She's never harmed anyone before. I don't think she's ever been violent in
she
her
hadn't
entire
even been
life.
off Earth before.
Yeah.
I mean, she
but
grew
then
up in a very isolated...
Here she is looking down at the man she loved and withholding medical care and watching him die an agonizing, horrific death and lying about it. That is eating her up inside. And now, as she's watching the crew, the remains of the crew kind of turn on each other. And by the way, I've got to say, when Raffi said, let's take a ride with Auntie Raffi, I was expecting a bit more of a trip.
Not cake, right?
But cake is good, so I'll allow it.
Cake is good. She had 3 pieces of it.
Yeah, red velvet.
And chocolate milk.
Excellent touch.
It was chocolate on top of chocolate.
Yep. It was red velvet.
But then she's just so broken and just devouring her soul by her she's twisting herself internally in ways that I can hardly even imagine, that the only way she can think to redeem herself is to poison herself, to almost kill herself.
Yeah.
She's gone from this innocence bookworm to this. And despite what she did to Maddox, I can't help but really feel for her.
Well, I would say that she didn't poison herself to redeem herself so much. It's very much implied. I mean, they don't straight up say it, but it's very much implied that by her action, she neuralizes the tracker inside her, because we see Narek very frustrated in the cockpit.
But that's she realizes that. So that's why it is a redemptive act.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that this doesn't redeem her at all. I'm just saying, like she knows that doing this, she's going to potentially be ending her own life.
Right.
Yeah.
And
this is her penance.
Yes, and
I mean, did you guys? Well, you remember she has to psych herself up to give herself the injection.
Right.
Also, another 3D printer uses a replicator.
Yes, they've made that a running
thing.
And I would I would just like to say, even if it is reaching just a little bit, I fucking told you, Joe, that Girardi was not evil.
And I agreed with you. Remember, I agreed with you, Travis, on that one. I don't think she's evil. I don't have much to add.
I didn't think she was evil either. I just thought she was this guy.
Oh, there were plenty of you who thought she turned.
No, I didn't think she turned. I think she got coerced.
And my argument was that coercion is too easy. It's like, seeing what we saw in this episode where she's feeling guilt and seeks redemption, that's real,
Yeah, but then coercion. We also see her. Okay. But we also have a scene in the trailer where she's telling Picard, if you saw the things I was shown, you would do the same exact things I did.
That doesn't mean coercion, dude. That just means she was convinced.
Yeah, but she wouldn't have done the things she did if she wasn't shown them in the first place.
Her entire idea, her entire self-value was destroyed in a moment. What would that do to you?
Exactly.
It would destroy my trust in the Federation and Starfleet in particular, considering I placed my trust in them for up to that point, and here is an admiral or here is Commodore telling me I must see this thing, and it completely and utterly breaks me.
On top of having to kill, someone you loved.
Mm-hmm.
And after killing a Romulan agent.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. She did do that.
None of us, if she had not been coerced joining the cause, would be shown these images.
At this point, I don't think this had anything to do with redemption for her. I think this full-on was her trying to take her life more than anything.
Oh,
In the most
why? I
painful
think
way
it's clear that
possible.
she knew that she was the tracker, and she was neutralizing the tracker.
Of course she knew she was the tracker, but she also knew that the solution would kill her.
No, she did not. It did not kill her. Number one, she chose a very specific thing that she knew would shut down her nervous system, and that it might kill her. But she's in a coma. She's alive.
I have a feeling she banked on it killing her.
The thing when it's produced, the little voice thing said it had uranium in it. I'm pretty sure she knew it was going to kill her.
I don't agree. Because it did not. Because the little warning she got did not say this will kill you. It said it will have adverse neurotoxic effects. Yeah, and so that's not death. That's damage, and she's clearly damaged. But this wasn't suicide. This was sacrifice.
This was penance. This was her wanting to suffer.
O did say that she would be facing a lot of sacrifice.
And by the way, it was not uranium. It was noranium hydride is what she took. So not uranium.
Either way, it made her foam up and just look like she was in agonizing pain.
That scene
Space
definitely
rabies.
disturbed the watch party.
Yeah, I mean, do you guys ever feel this way in movies where they have, someone takes like some poison or something and their mouth foams up? That always freaks me out.
Pulp Fiction.
Foaming
space rabies
freaks me out.
Space rabies.
The Romulan suicide acid.
Oh
yeah, similar. Okay, so let's jump back to Elnor and the showdown on the artifact. Son, you made a comment, which one I agree with. I think this was you about some of the choices Elnor appeared to make in terms of when he was battling and how. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So last week we were talking about whether or not Hugh would die, and I said Elnor has committed to defending Picard, which would include Picard's allies. Mm-hmm. It would make more sense that Elnor would die before we saw Hugh die. And to an extent, that would have happened if the Tal Shiar lady wasn't a Tal Shiar lady.
Well, specifically Zhat Vash. One of the interesting things that they make a point of is since the early episodes, people have just kept referring to Tal Shiar.
Because not everybody knows about the Zhat Vash.
Well, true, but this is the first the first reference since then to the Zhat Vash, and where we see an actual juxtaposition of the Zhat Vash with the Qowat Milat.
Commodore O said Zhat Vash.
When
she was talking to Narissa.
When? In episode 1. Yeah, I know. I'm saying since then we haven't heard that. So my point is, though, that that we see literally in front of us a juxtaposition of the two sort of operating philosophies of these ancient Romulan cults, I don't know, religions, whatever, philosophies, the Zhat Vash. Maybe. I'm not sure if it's actually a religion or a philosophy, but the point being that these are ancient and strongly held beliefs that shaped their worlds. And in the case of the Zhat Vash and ultimately Tal Shiar, it was all about secrecy and holding back, the knowledge is power, again, versus the Kawat Milat, for whom absolute candor is, so then we have them fighting, and she actually says,
diametrically opposed.
yeah, Jat Vaj versus Kawat Malloy, if that's what you really are, she says to him.
Because he's a guy.
And then they proceed to some pretty badass choreographed fighting, which, I feel like one-on-one, Elnor did a pretty good job, but in terms of defending Hugh, I think he fell kind of short. What did you guys think of that? I felt like the killing of Hugh just was too easy.
Talking about the fight in general leading up to that point, Elnor was a lot more like a ninja than a samurai this time around. Hitting and fading, using body shields. He was a badass up until the point where he fought Narissa, and for the most part, it was pretty good, but I think Elnor either got overconfident or he got too focused. Because then, of course,
I think he assumed that, when she threw down the gauntlet and they put away their weapons, his sword and her disruptor, and they said, this is not how Jat Vaj and Kawat Milat fight.
She manipulated
hand to hand.
Like
she's Tal Shiar.
Yeah. Exactly. So she fooled him, and but still, like, he should have anticipated. I feel like he should have anticipated that.
Elnor is also very young, and he's never faced Tal Shiar before.
Well, yeah.
He's also naive.
Mm-hmm.
So when he sees a challenge, he takes it for face value, thinks that the opposing party is going to be honorable, and yeah.
Also, why the hell, Hugh? These people are after you. Why the hell are you sticking around to watch these two fight? Why?
It's a fight.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he thought eventually he could help. Like, he doesn't seem like a runaway kind of guy to me. Well, the point being, he's not a runaway kind of guy. I mean,
except that's exactly what he did when all this fighting first broke out.
I don't know. I just didn't see a lot of.
She's literally about to blow his head off when she hears the sound of Elnor running away beside her. So she turns her head to fire at Elnor, and guess who disappears?
Hugh disappears completely.
Well, I was more disturbed by the fact that, I thought it was remarkable that she respects the treaty between the Federation and the Free Romulan state over the, what's that?
Too much paperwork.
But she respects it, is my point, which, that says a lot, because she's Tal Shiar, she's Jat Vaj, and she's still respecting a treaty. And that's why she doesn't kill Hugh. She kills all the XBs.
Hugh
until
is
he
high
does
profile,
something.
Though.
Yeah, that's exactly her point. She can kill the XBs because they're not Federation citizens.
One of which was Hirogen, by the way.
Oh, I didn't notice that. I'm going to have to take a look at that again. But that was very cool that you noticed that.
See that Easter egg.
So, yeah, I mean, so what I was troubled with, beyond sort of the mechanics and the choreography that you were, son, was just this idea that number one, and Narissa says this, why do you assume we're not monitoring everything you're saying? And number two, why do you say this stuff that would give her an excuse, a justification for killing you? I mean, because he's basically talking about open rebellion, leading an open rebellion out loud where they can hear him. And, and basically the only reason that she let him live, he just gave away.
I think the biggest reason this happened is because if the way this looks like it's going to lead to a Cardassian war kind of conflict with a broken Romulan state. That's the way this looks like it's going to fall apart.
This isn't going to be about a war. It's not about a war.
The way this looks to me, I don't think Hugh was really thinking clearly. He did just watch a bunch of his fellow XBs cut down indiscriminately. Up to this point, I got the impression that though at arm's length, he was working hand in hand with the Romulan Free State up to this point, and that he had maybe not their trust, but their confidence. That he was working
I
with
would
them
agree
to
with
free
that.
XBs, to make life a little better for them, even if he couldn't do everything he wanted to do with them. And then Narissa shows up, all pissed off and angry, executes a bunch of people. He sees that the Romulans, as a whole, have betrayed him and what he was there to do. So now he needs to do what he needs to do to protect the XBs and the unliberated Borg still on that cube, not realizing that he's dealing with Zhat Vash Tal Shiar.
Right. Well, I think you can probably assume Tal Shiar, but certainly not the Zhat Vash. Kate, where do you weigh in on the end of Hugh? And was it a noble sacrifice, or was it just stumbling around into his own death?
I think it was kind of stumbling around to his own death. And I think that was a brilliant choice on the part of the showrunners, because you get this, you fall into this pattern in science fiction of, oh, Hugh is he's making this grand pronouncement that they're going to take back the cube. And we know there are a whole bunch of Borg there that are probably just waiting to go assimilate something. And so to have it suddenly just flip completely on its head, that's how things work out sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have the best intentions in mind. You might even have the pieces in place, and you just make a mistake. Maybe you're just not good enough to get past the actual, trained professional killer. And I think that made it exceptionally heartbreaking that, Hugh had to watch people that he cared about die, and then he's going to try and fight back, and it just ends up coming to nothing for him. So, it just about killed me. That was the whole puddle of tears part.
Oh, man.
And when I thought about what they'd done and why they did it, I really, really quite admired the craft.
Travis.
It on top of Kate's notes there, when it happened, I mean, you have to picture my setting here. We were in the dark. My two roommates were sitting on this sofa, and I was on the sofa with my uncle. 4 people in a room. I'm the only one that probably knows a lot about the Trek lore and everything. As soon as it happened, I shouted, no! I shouted it. And, it was very gut-wrenching for me. I do believe it was very well handled. I mean, if this is probably the biggest emotional reaction the show has gotten out of me. So if you don't mind, I'm going to do a little thing here. I'm going to host a little moment of silence.
For Hugh.
For Hugh. He will never be forgotten.
Rest in peace. Now, Justin, I'm going to go to you because you don't think we've seen the last of Hugh.
No, I mean, okay, this is, we're going to go on the verge of fan wank here, but, it's being Star Trek, and the fact that he does have Borg nanoprobes inside of him. And they were en route to the Queen's Chamber. I mean, eventually, maybe when number 7 gets there and see what's going on, she puts 6 them in a regeneration alcove. Maybe they bring them back. Maybe. I mean, it's possible. I mean, it wouldn't be the most outrageous Star Trek regeneration bring back the life that we've had. I mean,
Nope, Discovery topped all those. Discovery. Let's be honest.
I really want to believe you, Justin, because I'm just gutted by the death of Hugh.
I don't see them letting it stay like that. I mean,
I totally see them doing that. I
I
don't
see,
want
I
them
see
to.
It. I don't
That
either.
would
But
kind of go against how the Borg work.
Let's put it this way. Like I said this in the chat earlier today. If they keep bringing people back, death is not going to mean anything.
Right.
Sometimes characters need to stay dead. Like,
Yeah,
I am gutted by this. Like, he only appeared in 2 episodes of TNG, and people are freaking out. Like, oh, they're just killing all the beloved characters. And I mean, like, the way they developed him in this series just goes to show just how much people care about this character. And that is, like, I'm going to say this, but that's probably why he should stay dead. If we get married to the reset button syndrome that Voyager did with its own
everything.
death, it's going to start meaning less and less. There is a reason why I don't care about Kirk's death, darkness. There is a reason I don't care that Harry is a literal clone in Voyager. There is
And Naomi.
I don't care that Naomi Wildman is this exact same clone thing. Like, it's just, there's a reason I don't care that Neelix was brought back. Like, if you're going to kill someone, sometime,
otherwise
you should just let them. I just set off my
and Hoshi and Enterprise.
Well, I think that's a good last word on that note. And though
I do want to bring up one final thing.
Sure.
The way that Hugh was acting makes me think that if push came, the way he thought, if push came to shove, the whole reason the Federation there was for the reclamation effort. And here the Romulans had betrayed that the Federation would side with him.
Well, they would have had he not openly rebelled, which gave them the justification.
He didn't openly rebel yet. He was only talking about it.
That's enough for the Romulans.
That's guilty.
Exactly.
He was literally on his way to go do that. So
That's all the Romulans needed, or at least that's all she needed in order to.
But it does mean that the Romulans acted first.
Actually,
technically he did.
He did, because he was the one that said, let's go do this thing.
Words are not action.
He went into the Queen cell. He helped Picard escape. He took off again with Elnor and started openly admitting that his plan was to lead a rebellion. I think that's sufficient.
It doesn't matter because the person coming to the rescue is the Fenris Ranger, 7 of 9. And
which is where I was going next. So despite Hugh's death, untimely in my opinion, and most of our opinions it sound like, he did give a setup for what we are likely or possibly going to see next when he said to Elnor, find one of the XBs, they can get into the Queen cell. And who's the most famous XB we know? And coupled, yeah, true. All right, second most, coupled with the fact that he did activate the Fenris Rangers SOS, which and given what we see in the preview, which is that amazing image of her enraged, apparently like going through the Borg cube. I've heard some people saying she's going to be a queen or whatever.
I hope not.
I hope it doesn't go that far. I think she will end up taking over the cube or doing something with that. But
I hope that Romulan bitch gets it.
Nessa is screwed.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. What are you looking up, Travis?
Oh, I hope Elnor slices her head off.
Yeah, she barely escaped. She barely escaped. Like he was about to kill her with her own weapon. And it made me kind of wonder, okay, who did she activate that herself, or was someone
Smart transporters?
What's that?
Smart transporters.
Yeah, smart transporters. Take me away when and in a moment of danger. Okay, so so where we end up in this episode is the reunion of Picard and Soji, who now trusts Picard, or has gotten a lot closer to trusting Picard, rejoining the rest of the Motley crew and the La Serena, which has successfully evaded Narek. Narek's mission, I guess, is to actually seek Soji. So what I'm curious about, though, is weren't they less interested in Soji herself than in the nest of synthetics that presumably exist on whatever the name of the planet was, which I forget.
I mean,
You wanted all of them.
after they found the location, it was very much like, well, she's no longer useful.
She's not that valuable to us.
She still needs to be killed.
Sure, but does Narek have to be the one doing that?
Narek's not the only operative at this juncture.
He's the one who's chasing them.
Well,
He's the one who's been designated the killer.
yes, that's exactly it. He was the one whose job it was to kill her when her usefulness had ended. He still has a job to do because it's left unfinished.
Okay.
And I want his fucking toys.
Yeah, I love that he was just twiddling that Romulan Rubik's Cube.
I don't know if it was a Rubik's Cube. It
was
like
something Romulan, but
it looks like a magnet ring of some sort, and I want it. I just want to reach my into the screen and take it out of his hands and fidget with it.
It's a folding cube. I used to see them all the time in stores in the 90s. You could unfold it into a rectangle. You could fold it. It was interestingly built where you could just reshape it constantly with a couple hands. Star Wars marketing used them as during the Phantom Menace promotion period.
Folding cube.
All right, so we're set up for something happening next in Broken Pieces. We know that Seven is involved, and we're going to launch shortly into our weekly Picard prediction Smackdown, so we can elaborate more there. But
I'm ready to get the hammer.
Yeah, I'm ready to see that hammer. Any closing thoughts on where we ended this episode? Yes, go ahead, son.
So I alluded to this in our Facebook chat that this does bring together a what the hell happened question. This is the tie off, the bookend for what happened to the Borg cube.
Say more. What do you mean?
Every single Romulan on the Borg cube seems to have the exact same knowledge that drives them absolutely mad, and at the same time, this Borg cube was cut off from the collective as a whole. Is it possible that when these Borg were assimilated, because of someone like Rhonda, who may have had such a knowledge like what O showed Jurati, it infected it not only started to infect the other Romulans who were being assimilated at the time, but then started to turn around and possibly infect the rest of the Borg, which, driving them mad, a Borg queen would have realized and said, nope, cut off.
That's an interesting theory. I remember you've sort of raised a similar theory before, which I think I tried to dismiss. I'm not going to dismiss it so much this week because I think it makes sense given what we've seen, clearly there's something about Romulans and the Borg that drove them mad. So, which is different from other XBs. So there's definitely something going on there. So I think you're at the very least targeting the right thing. Kate, any last thoughts on the episode?
Just that it was brilliant and it hurt, and I hope we have more.
More painful brilliance. Justin, how about you? Justin, how about you?
My bad. I thought I had my thing on. No, I mean, it was a great episode. I loved the way everything flowed. I really don't think he's dead, but we'll get ready. We'll get more into that in this next segment. And oh yeah, this is turning out to be a fantastic mode of storytelling. I love the way they have put this series together. Every aspect of it keeps flowing. There's not been a slow episode yet. I love it, and I hope they continue this pace on with season 2.
Some people have felt like some of the earlier episodes were slow. I don't agree with that. But Travis, any final thoughts on the episode?
2 thoughts. Narek, give me your fucking toys. Second thought. Elnor, you let me down, buddy, but I still want your babies.
Oh, there you go. I do too. And Ross, close us out.
This episode did nostalgia right. It called back to a lot of some of the best aspects of TNG, but did a really good job of advancing the timeline of some very key characters that aided Picard and Soji on their journey. We had a beautiful mix of emotional highs and really, really wonderful feel-good moments. Kestra stole the show.
Yeah.
And I really, really want a tomato and basil pizza, damn it. It's breakfast burritos all over again.
You speak my mind for sure. All right, let's wrap up this episode of Make It So. We will be continuing our prediction segment, which we will be releasing separately and simultaneously with the review show. So join us back for that. And otherwise, return next week as we dive into episode 8, Broken Pieces, which is the last single episode. Son, you're cracking me up. Say something so the folks at home can see what you replaced.
We will see you guys next time.
Exactly.
Oh, God.
Yes. So join us again, episode 8. The last regular episode before the 2-parter that will close out the season, episodes 9 and 10. Justin, remind me the titles for those. Those were released today, I think.
Don't have
and
part 1 and part 2, so I don't have it on me at the moment.
I should have remembered, but it was announced today.
Hold on,
Broken Pieces and Breaking Dawn parts 1 and 2.
Oh God, I hope not.
Hold on, I'm pulling it up here.
In the meantime, while Travis is doing that, program note, please remember that you can join us for our regular Super Geeks podcast, which is we're recording on Sunday and
broadcasted live on twitch.tv/live_love_play.
So join us live if you can. If not, the recorded version will be available on Monday the 9th, right?
And shout out to Weird Al Yankovic being in the in that weird mind meld scene.
What?
Yes.
Oh, I love that you had that teed up, son.
Did I overshoot it?
Okay, so we'll add it in the Picard Smackdown so we can close out this show. Thanks again for joining us. Kate, thanks for joining us as our guest. Please stick around for the Smackdown. And folks at home, we'll see you next week.
Okay. And